Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today. I recently had the honor of being interviewed by Ashley Weinaug from the Great American Painting, a wonderful project that has been developed to allow artists to showcase their work and come together as a community during this pandemic. So I'm going to share that interview with you. I have two paintings that have been shared with that site, and what you're seeing now is one of them called Fiesta For One, and we talk about that during the interview. The other painting that is part of the project is this one, which is called Monhegan Blues. And this painting has sold already, but we talk a little bit about this painting in the interview as well. So, without further ado, here is our Instagram Live interview. Thanks for watching.
Hello. How's everyone doing? Happy Thursday, everybody. It's Ashley from the Great American Painting. Today we're going to be speaking with artist Debbie Mueller about her two pieces in the collection. So we're looking forward to that conversation. So thank you guys for joining us. Hope everyone had a safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday last week. So Debbie is an incredible artist in the collection. She has two pieces currently in the collection. Her first one, which we'll spend the majority of the time talking about, is called Monhegan Blues. And the second one is Fiesta For One. One of them is available and the other one has been sold. So we're excited to talk to Debbie and learn a little bit more about her pandemic experience and also learn a little bit about the story behind her artwork to see the emotion and everything that she's been going through during this time. So I am going to invite Debbie into the conversation, and thank you guys so much for joining us today. Just a reminder, all of our past pandemic artwork stories can be found on our IGTV, also on our website. Had the chance to speak with a ton of great artists. So without further ado, we're gonna invite Debbie in and learn a little bit about her story. So Debbie, I will send you the request right now. Just sent it. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing, Debbie?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm doing
Thank
great.
you so much for joining us this Thursday.
Thank you for having me. That's nice.
Of course. Have you done many Instagram lives before?
No, I haven't. I've done a little Facebook Live, but I hadn't done Instagram Live before, so this is good. Check and make sure my head's where it should be. Sound okay?
Yeah, it looks perfect. And
Good.
lots of
Okay.
training in today to hear about your artwork. And I know that I said you have two pieces in the collection. So I would love to talk to you about both of them, and we'll definitely get into that. But I have just loved seeing the artwork that you have created, and you haven't been doing this for very long. It seems like you've been very creative, your whole life, but you call yourself a late bloomer artist, which is
Definitely
a great way to put it. But what was life growing up for you like, and how did you kind of discover that creative side before you actually fully went into it?
Yeah, so I have wonderful parents, and my mom has always painted as mostly as a hobby. She at times has been a little more kind of serious with it and pursued it more, but she's always on and off taken classes and done some different types of painting as well as some crafty things. My dad was always front and center, like, I am not an artist, but I am crafty. And so he did pottery. And so actually when I was in high school, we took a pottery class together. And then later on, he started getting involved in stained glass and has done beautiful stained glass work. In fact, I think you can see over my head, there's a seashell with glass around it, and that's something that he made. And so he did some teaching at the Campbell School and made kaleidoscopes, but he always was very clear that he was not an artist. And so I knew who I was aligned with, which was my dad. Like I said, I had no artistic talent. I did not have like native drawing ability. I didn't sketch. I didn't think I was particularly good at art, and so I didn't do it. But I did crafty things. So I did pottery. I played with mosaics. I've always loved color. And so like each thing ended up feeding into painting, but I loved the decision making about how to combine colors with mosaics. And then I did some photography as well. And that was very, very helpful, of course, with design. And so I did all of those things and yet still was very much like, oh no, I have no artistic ability whatsoever. And then we were visiting them in 2016. It was a boring day. There wasn't much to do. Everybody was a little grumpy. And my mother had some acrylic paint where we were. And she said, do you want to paint? And my first impulse was to say, no. Like, why would I want to do that? But I had nothing better to do. And so she pulled out some paint, and I had taken a photo the day before of this dock at dusk, and there were reflections in the water from the sky. And so for about an hour I painted, and trust me, it was not a good painting, but I recognized how I felt doing it. I was like, oh my gosh, like this feels wonderful. It was meditative, but it was creative. And I just thought the next day I was like, could we do that again? 8 colors at Michael's because I had no idea you could mix color. I just like literally didn't know anything. And so once I had been doing it on my own for a little while, I said, well, I could probably benefit from some classes. So I started taking classes locally and then found a workshop, and it didn't take long for me to decide that this was my life's passion and that I wanted to be just as good as I could possibly be.
Wow.
So.
I love that story. You know, it's never too late to discover a new passion or whatever it may be. That's such an interesting testament to that.
I could have so easily said no. I almost said no to that offer. And the course of my life would have been so different and so much less joyful than it is now. So that's why I tell people, because it's like, if someone says, do you want to try something? Just say yes, like try it. So, yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. And so your kind of career that you had before you got more deeper into your creative side, you were in the medical field, and you still...
Oh, I still am. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, and until this past June, I was working full time. And then in June, I started a new job that's slightly less than full time, but I'm packing it into 3 days. So it's giving me an extra day to paint. But I was very much a full-time doctor at the start of the pandemic. And, you know, painting aside, I mean, that was a huge challenge. I was the head of my department of OBGYN. And so, of course, all of the things that everyone's had to learn about COVID, we had to learn about taking care of pregnant women and their babies and understanding what the right thing was to do. And of course, because this is brand new, it was changing every week. And so it was very frightening. And actually, you talked a little bit about how the pandemic affected me and my painting. You know, a lot of people, I think, have commented that it was difficult for them to paint. And for probably the first month or so, I experienced that as well. We had a meeting of all the leadership in our hospital, and the chief medical officer of the hospital actually said, you know, this is going to get really bad for us. And, you know, some of us are going to get COVID, and some of us are probably going to die from COVID. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like just hearing that, like I take risks as a physician. I take care of people who have conditions that I can catch through a needle stick and things like that. And that's always been something that I readily took on. But suddenly it was just this like, oh my gosh, I could lose my life by going to work. And that, I'm not usually an anxious person, but that definitely affected me in a very powerful way. And for a couple of weeks, I couldn't paint. And then I just had to again. You know, it just was like this, it clearly wasn't going to go away. I think in the beginning, we all thought, oh, this will blow over in just a few months. And when I could see that, no, this is going to be with us for a long time, it was like, okay, I have to live with this anxiety and live with this fear. And so it was back to the easel. And then once I was able to get back to work, it was an escape from it for me, because of course you're so totally focused when you're painting that you can't think about COVID and other negative things. So it's been a great relief.
Wow. Yeah, what a unique perspective that you offer, not only as a physician, but also an artist. So we're so thankful to have you and your story in the collection. But, having both of those backgrounds as working in the medical field and also being an artist, how have you tried to stay positive for both yourself and your friends and family and other artists around you?
Yeah. Well, I am a positive person. Like even in the midst of things, I'm like, things will get better. I've always been an optimist. So I just think that carries through. That's just who I am.
Totally. That's
Yeah.
so awesome. That's super important. And I have kind of taken a look at what you've been up to, and it seems like during the pandemic, you started a new project of a YouTube channel. Um,
Like I'm all about trying new things. So,
and you cover so many topics on it. You talk about, setting up for plein air, painting outside. You talk about still lives. Like, what inspired you to create that? And what are you hoping to share through it?
So I love Michael Chamberlain's YouTube channel. I really enjoy his work. I have one of his paintings hanging up on the wall over there. And then I listen to a lot of podcasts. I have an hour trip to work now in my new job each way, so I do a lot of podcasts. And I heard a podcast with somebody who was probably a little older than I am, and had been really successful with a YouTube channel. And I thought, I could do that. And in terms of what I wanted to share, I think as a relatively new artist, I just want people to understand that anybody can do what we're doing. That like there's no magic. I think sometimes when you see a painting appear, you're like, wow, I could never do that. And I think by watching someone go through things step by step, it just becomes much more approachable. There's no point
Right.
where I did something magic with my hands. I'm just following along. And I was saying that my whole life I wasn't an artist and I didn't draw, and that's my challenge. When I mess up a painting, it's almost always with the drawing. And so I show some of the things that I do to try to be more accurate. I'm getting better. I'm practicing and so I'm getting better. But I try to share some of the tips that help me be successful where I am.
Yeah, I love that. That's so interesting. And one of the tips that you shared, which I never knew was a thing, was you talked about a mirror being one of your favorite tools.
It's
Can you talk
essential.
about that?
So there's something as a physician, I should probably understand what's going on in the brain. But within a very short period of time of starting a drawing or a painting, your brain like adapts to whatever it is that you've put on that paper or that canvas as being good or as being like correct, and you stop seeing your mistakes. Maybe it's like not seeing like where your face is crooked or things like that in the mirror. And so I have had situations where I've gotten really far along in a painting and then suddenly can see it from a different perspective, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. And so by inverting the image, your brain, it's like it's seeing it for the very first time. And so you can do it by looking in a mirror, and I try to remember to do that when I'm at the early stages of a painting, like either the initial drawing or like the painting that's behind me where I've just done a tonal block in a value study, a value painting, to try to see the mistakes before I carry it further. I've had some where I've forgotten to do it. I get to the end and I'm like, oh my gosh, that roof line is totally off or is drawn wrong or something like that. So you can either do it with a mirror or you can take a photo, and sometimes just taking the photo, even if you don't do anything else with it, you'll see it differently. But if you go into the crop mode, you can invert it and make it backwards. Or there's software where you can put two images side by side. And sometimes what I'll do is put my painting side by side with my reference image and be able to see the differences that way. I mean, I don't always paint exactly what's in my reference image, so that is something I don't use as much. But I think all of those ways work and they are helpful.
Yeah, that's such a good tip. I love that.
Yeah.
And I like that you said kind of taking a step back and seeing it from a different point of view.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And I would love to bring up the first piece that you have in the collection.
Sure.
Um, but this piece is sold, so that's great.
Yeah.
And I think it's just such an incredible, beautiful painting in general, but it really provides this serene and you say timelessness type of scene. And you say that it also appears that the world's problems seem so far away. So can you talk a little bit more about why you wanted to submit this piece into the collection and the emotion you had kind of behind it?
Yeah, so this is the Lighthouse Keeper's house on Monhegan Island. And for me, Monhegan has a lot of significance because it was where I went for my first workshop. And of course, it has such a rich art history. So many of my like art heroes have painted there. And I think there's something about this view. You really, I mean, you can maybe see a few rooftops from this location. I sometimes put them in and sometimes I don't. But really, when you're standing there and looking out, it feels like it's you in the world. And it's you in the world now, and it could be you in the world 75 years ago. And when 90 years ago, whatever it was, when Hopper painted there. And so it brings into the view all of these, elements, the sky and the sea and something man-made. And so I don't get tired of painting this building. It's the same thing behind me again now from a different point of view. And it resonates with people. I have had a lot of success in selling the paintings that I've done of this building. And I just think that there's something that speaks to people about sort of this moment of, sort of where you are in the world with nature and something too with the shadows. I think the idea of sort of maybe the passing time, like I'm very aware that these shadows change very quickly if you're standing at the building. If you do a plein air painting, it obviously looks completely different when you're done than when you began. And so I think that kind of gives that sense of time passing.
I love that. Awesome. And then the other piece you have in the collection is a bit different, but
Yeah.
I love it. You said it was an old painting. Oh, I'm covering her face. Let's see if I can move it. That's a little bit better, I guess.
Yeah.
It was an older painting, but the story behind it, I think, is so it's so fitting. So this one's called Fiesta For One. Can you talk a little bit about the story and why you felt it was still relevant today?
Yeah, so my husband and I went to Santa Fe a few years ago. There was a wonderful conference at the La Fonda Hotel, which is right on that main square, on transgender healthcare, which is something that I'm very interested in. And so we went to this conference, and we went and had breakfast one morning at a place, I think it's called Cafe on the Square, and sat down, had amazing cornmeal blueberry pancakes that I've never had anywhere else. But this woman came in and she sat down by herself, and she just had so much dignity and poise, and she was very still. She was very quiet. She wasn't really paying a lot of attention to what was going on outside. And outside, it was when they have their annual fiesta. So the square was actually very full, and there was streamers. The building that you see through the window had these like mylar streamers on it. And there was such a contrast between the hubbub that was going on outside and all the activity and all the sort of, celebration, and the quiet dignity of this woman sitting at the table, drinking her tea, just having seen, I'm sure, so much in her life. And so I was tried to be surreptitious, and I was taking a picture outside, but I took a picture of her and I painted her. So
I love it. Well, I think it was worth it. I'm sure she'd be honored that you took this photo and painted her.
yeah, it was a moment.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm sure you've been up to so many things during this pandemic experience the past couple of months. And in addition to creating your YouTube channel and working on new projects, have there been any other positive that you've seen during this unknown and weird time?
Yeah, so I think Zoom has been like a real plus. I've done some great art workshops on Zoom. I think I'm participating in a group with Todd Benita, who it's a artist growth workshop, and so we meet once a week, and sort of it builds a little community, and so thank goodness for that, because I think that's what we're all missing so much, and craving is that sense of community. And so I think the technology will not go away once we can be in person together. I think it's allowed people to take workshops who couldn't travel before, either because of family responsibilities or cost or their work or whatever. And so I think that that's been a real plus.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And speaking of community, I love that you said that the artists that we have in the collection, including yourself, have just been so incredible and diverse.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to see everyone's point of view from this experience. Are there any pieces of artwork in the collection that you really have come to love?
Yeah, so you had sent me some questions beforehand, and you were actually like, are there artists or artwork that connect with you? And so I divided it into 3 categories.
Okay.
So first, there are some artists that I know who are friends, and so I'm going to give them a shout out. And so that would be Hilary Scott, Debbie Shirley, Judy Schubert, and David Lucier. So their work is wonderful, and people should definitely look at them. Then there were groups of artists that I already knew, whose work I already loved, and I could not possibly like name all of them. That was a long list, but a few that I'll mention are Jeff Williams, Josh Clare, Paul Schulenberg, Jeffrey Hayes, and Joshua Cunningham. So, but then there were some new artists that I discovered through the collection, and so just a few of them that made an impression on me were Ken Salaz, Ellen Howard, and Ray Hassard. So it's just, that's been, because I don't have a formal art education, to be honest, like Instagram is part of my art education, and I love discovering new artists and seeing their work, people who paint in a way that's more similar to me and people who paint completely differently than I do. And so this has just been another source of inspiration.
Oh, that's awesome. And so nice to hear. It's interesting to hear every artist experience with it, but everyone knows probably at least one and discovers at least one person. So
Yeah.
it's to help kind of drive that community and learning. So that's great. And the last question I really have for you is just, what has it been like participating in the Great American Paint-In during this time?
So I think back to the sense of community is that it's just created yet another community of artists that can feel connected at a time that we can't connect in person. And so I'm grateful for that.
Awesome. Well, we're so grateful for you and your
thank you.
question. So thank you so much, Debbie. And everyone watching, this piece of art right here, Fiesta For One, is still available. It's on our website. Definitely check out the rest of Debbie's work. Check out her YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Watch. But thank you so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.